Hello again from my front porch. Today I want to address something rather serious, actually. I'm going to put back on my teacher hat because as many of you know, I originally started my professional life as a public school teacher, where I was a journalism, U.S. government, and U.S. history teacher at the junior and senior high school level here in Iowa. Did that was licensed as that for several years. Worked as a school district initially in my career, and then eventually crossed over into the private sector, where I've spent much of my professional career since. But in that, that means that I know a thing or two about those topics. And even on the topic of just governmental things, I ran for office myself back in the mid-90s, ran for state senate, and get a chance to see behind the curtain. And so it's not just book knowledge, but it's also actual practical experience of seeing it. Now I've been involved with political stuff before that too, but more just as the partisan grassroots crusader. And no offense to anybody who is a passionate person in their party, but a lot of times you can get wrapped up in what you're being told, and it may not be completely accurate. It's biased. Let's just say that. But anyway, so I have something serious to talk about. It's kind of funny. I'm wearing my Monkeys sweatshirt, so I'm kind of sitting like this, so that's not sticking up your head. It's not that there's anything wrong with the Monkeys logo thing, but it's probably a little distracting from being serious, kind of thing. But anyway, I want to talk about impeachment. And the reason I want to talk about it is because I keep seeing stuff on Facebook that is not only wrong, but in some cases just flat out lies. And what really frustrates me is that some of the things that I see about that topic are from individuals who are supposedly well-educated, experts that are being quoted in major media sources, and even elected officials who are talking about the topic that clearly have no clue what they're talking about, that they're talking wishful thinking as opposed to reality of what it all means, and that frustrates me, and it frustrates me for two reasons. One, just because of the facts of what impeachment is and what it is not, how it works, but also because one of my political heroes. See, I have basically three political heroes. Ronald Reagan, who was the first president that I ever was old enough to vote for and worked for. Again, he's got flaws. Every politician has flaws. If you exalt and glorify any politician and you're like, oh, I root for that politician, they can do no wrong, you've set yourself up for failure. I don't care who it is. Throw out any name you want to. There is not one single perfect politician. And if you think that some politician you support is perfect, you're delusional. I'm just being blunt. Now, some are less perfect than others, but none of them are perfect. Every single one has flaws. So let's just get that out of the way. So even as I list who my political heroes are, my three political heroes, I don't exalt them as being perfect. I know that each of them are flawed human beings. But Ronald Reagan is one of them. Teddy Roosevelt, another one of them. And James W. Grimes, who was a U.S. Senator from Iowa, was a governor of Iowa, actually, one of the first governors of Iowa, and then went on to become a U.S. Senator. There are several. There's the Grimes building, the federal building downtown, state building downtown. There's the city of Grimes here in just outside of Des Moines that's named after him. Among his other successes or things of note is during his time in the U.S. Senate, he initiated the creation of what would become the Congressional Medal of Honor, and so he started that, started the creation of that honor medal that then expanded into becoming something that wasn't purely for certain military uses, but in a broader sense, being given out by Congress, Congressional Medal of Honor. And so he did a number of things. He also was part of what they called a peace conference group in the days leading up to the Civil War. That there were individuals in Congress that saw it on the horizon and tried to work together to try to prevent the events from transpiring. Obviously, were unsuccessful. But so he was well aware of what was going on and focused on it. Now he was a Republican, and that's relevant to this story, because the reason I like James Grimes for many aspects of his career, but there was one deciding thing he did that really solidifies in my mind why he is one of my political heroes. And that is the impeachment of Andrew Johnson. Now, before I get into the impeachment of Andrew Johnson, let's talk about what impeachment really is. A lot of people glorify it, and they say, oh, impeachment is this big thing, is this big deal. You know what? Impeachment is a fancy word for indicted, for being charged. See, the way it works is there are two chambers to Congress. There's the House of Representatives and there's the Senate. The House of Representatives has the task of bringing charges. They're the ones that are responsible for saying, here are the things that we're accusing the president of. To be impeached, those have to rise to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, what are high crimes and misdemeanors? That is where the U.S. House of Representatives comes into play, where if the president's been accused of wrongdoing, they have to consider what those things are, and they then look at those things and say, do they rise to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors? Now, among the things that are established is these need to be things that the president has done while president. So you can't go and say, like in the case of our current president, Donald Trump, you can't say, well, Donald Trump did this 10 years before he was elected, and so we're going to impeach him. No, that's not the way it works. Because impeachment is about the president, while president, doing something that is so terrible that it rises to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors. Other things that individual may do outside of their presidency, they're held accountable the same way you and I are through the legal system. So anyway, so impeachment starts with the House of Representatives determining we feel there is sufficient grounds and evidence being key, we feel there are sufficient grounds and evidence to bring charges. At that point, it is impeachment. Then the president who has been impeached, the case goes to the U.S. Senate. The U.S. Senate are the judges. They're the ones who determine what punishment that president receives. Now, there has never been a president removed from office for impeachment in the entire history of our country. There have been two presidents who have been impeached, though. Andrew Johnson, who succeeded Abraham Lincoln after his assassination, and Bill Clinton. People say, well, oh, Bill Clinton, no, he wasn't impeached. No, that didn't work because he didn't get kicked out. Andrew Johnson didn't get kicked out of office either, which ties into my story about James Grimes, which we'll get back to. In both cases, each of those presidents, Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton, in both cases, those presidents were found to be guilty by the House of Representatives of crimes that they said rose to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors. Then those cases went to the Senate, where the Senate judged those things, and in both cases, the Senate did not implement a punishment, did not remove the president from office or enact other issues, other restrictions. And again, we'll get back to that here with my story about James Grimes. Now, people say, well, what about Richard Nixon? He was impeached and he was kicked out of office. No. You're wrong on both counts. Richard Nixon was not impeached. He saw the writing. He probably would have been impeached, and there's very little question about that. And had he been impeached, there's very little question that he would have been removed from office. So with that being the case, Richard Nixon wisely resigned from office before those proceedings could be completed, at which point the proceedings were dropped. Why were they dropped? Did he not commit the crime? But again, the ultimate punishment that would be dished out by the Senate is removal from office, which he had self-removed himself. And so at that point, that process stopped. So Richard Nixon, who was of those three, Richard Nixon was the most worthy of impeachment and removal from office, and yet neither happened in his case. Now, Bill Clinton, he was impeached because he and his wife Hillary were under investigation for illegal financial activities related to a whitewater investment scandal that had taken place. And so there was a special counsel that was brought on board, just like Donald Trump recently had special counsel working for nearly 2 years on the Russian collusion thing. That special counsel was not able to prove that there was financial misconduct, but did uncover that Bill Clinton had had an affair with a staff member, an intern actually at the White House, half his age. Now, you can say whatever you want to about that's horrible, that was misconduct, that was whatever. But the question is, does that rise to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors? And the answer is no, it would not. But where Bill Clinton tripped up is when, under oath, he was asked about the affair, he lied to the special counsel. Then when it was discovered that it was all true, then that lie is what he was brought forth on the lying under oath and an attempt to use his office to cover up his improper activity. So that's why you hear people now today saying, well, but Bill Clinton, he was impeached just over having sex. No, actually, that's not true. He was not impeached for having sex. He was not impeached for misconduct in office. Although in a private sector, a CEO of a company caught literally having sex with an intern in their office during work hours, that would be grounds for termination. That would get you kicked out. But in the case of the presidency, that's not a high crimes and misdemeanor. However, lying under oath to the special counsel, that did the House of Representatives determined that did rise to the level of high crime and misdemeanor, and so they enacted impeachment. Now, Republicans controlled the House of Representatives, so it was kind of a given it was probably going to happen. But then it went to the Senate that was controlled by the Democrats, who were the judges, and they decided, you know what? No, we're not doing anything. We don't think this is worthy, and they dropped it. And so nothing really happened to Bill Clinton. He got kind of a slap on the wrist as far as Congress was concerned. There were some other fallouts from it. He lost his law license for a period of time because he had lied under oath, and you can't do that and stuff. But as far as the whole impeachment thing, he was impeached, but he wasn't removed from office. Richard Nixon, who again hit Congress controlled by Republicans, both chambers at that point in time. Richard Nixon not impeached and not removed from office because he quit. Now, let's go all the way back to Andrew Johnson. Lincoln is assassinated. Lincoln in the Civil War has ended, and Lincoln wants to implement Reconstruction in the South. Reconstruction efforts that would be favorable, that would be soft on the South, because his goal was to not punish them for having seceded, but actually to embrace them and bring them back together and try to heal the divisions, bring the nation back together. That was Lincoln's vision. Now, Lincoln was a Republican. His vice president, Andrew Johnson, was a Democrat, because at that point in time, we were still electing president and vice president separately. Now we elect them, of course, as a combined ticket. They're just, when you cast a vote for president, you're also voting for the vice president, and it's the same ticket. But at that point in time, we were still electing them separately. Well, Lincoln is assassinated now, and Andrew Johnson, Democrat, assumes the presidency because Lincoln's gone. Andrew Johnson wants to continue this leniency on the South. But Republicans who control supermajority level, control both chambers of Congress, most of them are they're out for blood, literally, from the South. Number one, they're still ticked off over the Civil War. They're not feeling as warm fuzzy as Abraham Lincoln did. And now a Southern sympathizer, John Wilkes Booth, has killed President Lincoln. And the Republicans in Congress, they want to take him down. And the Secretary of War, Edward Stanton, wants to lead the charge on this, wants to make them pay. Andrew Johnson to his credit, now, Andrew Johnson had a lot of issues. In fact, if you're going to look for a parallel to Donald Trump in past presidents, Andrew Jackson is a good parallel. Andrew Johnson is also a good parallel, because in the case of Andrew Johnson, there are very few individuals who actually respected him. A lot of people felt like he did not deserve to be in the presidency. He was too crass. He was unprofessional. A lot of the attacks, a lot of the accusations that get thrown out at Donald Trump as to why Trump is not good enough to be president would have applied to Andrew Johnson too. So this is an interesting parallel to be looking at here. But so Andrew Johnson is now butting heads with Edward Stanton, who's Secretary of War, because Stanton's trying to lead the charge that pretty much most of Congress wants to do. And so Stanton tries to dismantle what Lincoln wanted and instead implement some harsh punishments on the South. And so Andrew Johnson says, no, can't do this. I'm going to fire Edward Stanton, starts taking steps to remove him from office. To which those in Congress, Republicans who can control Congress, passed what they call the Tenure of Office Act. And it is purely a bald-faced attempt to prevent the president, Andrew Johnson, from being able to remove Stanton from that cabinet position. What it basically said was, just like a president has to get approval from Congress to appoint someone to their cabinet, they said that the president now also had to get Congress's approval to fire somebody from their cabinet. And they wrote it specifically to protect Stanton. That was the whole purpose of this. So anyway, that sets the stage. Well, Andrew Johnson defies this. He doesn't believe it's constitutional. He doesn't believe that makes sense. So he fires Stanton anyway. And the Republicans in the House of Representatives have a conniption fit. And they proceed to bring Andrew Johnson up on charges, and the Republicans in the House of Representatives determine that Andrew Johnson is worthy of impeachment, and they impeach him. He becomes the first president in U.S. history to be impeached. But then it goes to the Senate, who is also controlled overwhelmingly by Republicans. And it goes to the Senate and it starts being debated. But in the Senate, what many expected to be a slam dunk, that they were going to then remove Andrew Johnson from office and fill the presidency with somebody far more favorable, and they get back on track with punishing the South. 7 Republican senators broke ranks with their fellow Republicans. 7 broke ranks and voted to not punish Johnson, to not remove him from office. James Grimes was one of those 7. Now, James Grimes also made some comments that I want to share with you. James Grimes said, "I cannot agree to destroy the harmonious working of the Constitution for the sake of getting rid of an unacceptable president." He did not think that Johnson was acceptable. He disagreed with Johnson in almost every way possible. But again, he could not agree to destroy the harmonious working of the Constitution for the sake of getting rid of an unacceptable president. He went on to say, "Whatever my opinion of the incumbent," the president in office, "whatever my opinion of the incumbent, I cannot consent to trifle with the high office he holds." He was understanding there's a clear distinction between my disdain for the office holder versus my respect for the office itself. I can do nothing which by implication may be construed into an approval of impeachment as part of a future political machinery. Now think about that. He's talking about precedent. He's expressing his concern that if we do this, we all know that Andrew Johnson is a horrible president. He aggravates me and frustrates me as much as he does the rest of you. But if we do this, if we take this action on this president for this petty political reason, we have set in motion a precedent that says impeachment now is something that a Congress can hold over any subsequent president that when the majority in power disagrees with the president, we don't just challenge you legislatively, we will kick you out of office, whether it's really high crimes and misdemeanor or not. We'll say it is, the Senate will, the same majority in the Senate will agree with that, and boom, you're out of office, because now we have thrown the balance of power completely out of whack and made Congress the supreme entity in the government. And in fact, that's also in other comments that he makes. But let me again, because this is really, really great, let me again repeat that. I can do nothing which by implication may be construed into an approval of impeachment as part of future political machinery. Now, James Grimes took that stand and as one of 7 Republicans voted against punishing and removing Andrew Johnson from office. For that act that I consider to be the right action and the noble act, for that, all 7 of those Republicans were then investigated on charges that they were bribed, and James Grimes was vilified horribly, nationwide, even back here in Iowa. People that had loved him beforehand just tore him to task. We think the media is biased and spews things now that are intended to guide people to go a certain direction. Oh, you should have saw the kind of stuff that was being written, well, about Lincoln too, Megan, but about James Grimes after he took that stand. James Grimes, his political career came to an abrupt end, which should have actually continued on for a long time, because he was really a brilliant man and a very principled individual. Came to an end. He was done, and within 2 years after this act, he was dead. His health suffered. Every aspect of his life took a hit because of that, because he took a stand and did the very right thing. Now, why am I telling all of this stuff about James Grimes as part of this? It's part of this discussion of impeachment. Because impeachment, remember, is just filing charges. That is so easy to do, and the House of Representatives can do it in a very petty fashion. They have done it before. Doesn't make it right. The Senate, thankfully, has never punished a president for similar petty reason. Now, they came very close with Andrew Johnson, and thankfully, because of 7 senators, one of which was James Grimes, thankfully, because of those 7 senators, they saved Congress from making that mistake. But today we are back, in my opinion, right back to Andrew Johnson's time. We have one party that controls Congress and one party that controls the Senate. And the party that controls Congress, the Democrats, they want to take out the Republican president because they don't like him. Now, there are a lot of people don't like him. I'm not even a fan of his in most of the stuff he does, and I cringe whenever I see him posting on Twitter and things like that. And some of the things he says on the stump and speeches, just, oh my, I'm like, really, do you have to do that? But, as much as I may not like it, much as I may loathe aspects of who Donald Trump as a person is, James Grimes needs to be heated about the concern over precedent being set. Now, we just had this special counsel, Robert Mueller, who did his whole investigation for 2 years and wasn't able to find evidence to verify and to support that there were crimes committed. Now, Democrats in the House claim, well, we still want to see what's there because there might be something impeachable. No, there's not. If the special counsel wasn't able to find evidence, the best that those Democrats will be able to find are accusations and innuendos, which will be no better than what the Republicans tried to use when impeaching Andrew Johnson. They were wrong to have impeached Andrew Johnson over the reasons that they did. And if Democrats can't have solid proof, if they try to do it just based on attitude, assumption, and innuendo, that is not an appropriate use for impeachment. And I would even say that Bill Clinton's impeachment, I don't think he should have been impeached either. Do I approve of what he did? Absolutely not. No. But there was a gotcha factor there. The Republicans at that time, they desperately wanted to hurt Bill Clinton, and they couldn't beat him at the ballot box, and so that was their attempt to beat him that way. Well, we're seeing a little bit of that again too. I think there is concern among Democrats as to, will they actually be able to beat Donald Trump in re-election? And so this is a way to try to take him out through impeachment. Well, I don't know. I disagree. That would be a misuse of the impeachment process. Now, if there is legitimate crime, then they should go after it. If there are indeed high crimes and misdemeanors, absolutely hold them accountable for that. But anything short of that, they should not. They absolutely should not pursue that course of action, because impeachment is serious. And as one of my political heroes, James Grimes, says, it should not be something that is taken lightly. And with that, the sun has been setting. It is now totally dark. I'm going to have to lighten this up even to be able to post online. So I might as well stop now and into my babbling. But there you go. That's my pontification on impeachment. Hopefully there you've learned a thing or two. And again, this is not me trying to make a political statement. I'm not defending Donald Trump. I'm not attacking Republicans or Democrats. I'm simply saying impeachment is a very, very serious thing, just like James Grimes recognized that it was all those years ago, and it needs to continue to be held in that same mindset. And with that, I'll see you next time from my front porch.